Hello, everybody, and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. Come hell or high water or snowstorm, folks, we're going to make it in studio for you, bring you all the highlights, the local football action over the last weekend. I'm your host, BJ Kuberulis, alongside of Paul Frummelt and Dave Buschenfeld. They're regulars here on the Fairfax Sports Report, and we are blessed to have a guest in studio with us. That's Stephen Norris. Stephen had done a great job covering the Prince William counties, local and also Loudoun County, so he's got some good depth of knowledge when it comes to these teams that are local teams here in the Fairfax area are going to be squaring off against. So Stephen, the enemy here tonight. All right, we're going to pick your brain a little bit about Woodbridge and Potomac. That's who Westfield and Stonebridge will be facing off with. Quarterback Mike Glennon of the Westfield Bulldogs is going to be calling in a little bit later, and Coach Mickey Thompson of Stonebridge will also be calling in. Joe Conroy of the Potomac News also going to be giving us some of his knowledge on some of those Northwest region teams that he covers. But before we get to all that, let's thank the folks, of course, that make this show possible. And it's our teammate. That's right, Paul. We have teammates. CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Hey, we're on the web. Go to www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Today you can find a preview, Who is Woodbridge? You can also find Dave's insight about who he thinks will win the state championship game. More on Woodbridge on the website. All right, guys, speaking of Woodbridge, they're going to be facing off with Westfield, a local power that has been getting it done at the state level for quite some time. They're in their second berth now. We all know Sean Glennon, of course, won a state title. He's now at Virginia Tech. His little brother going to NC State. He could do one more better than Sean. Sean only won 14 games to go 14-0. Mike could go 15-0. Mike's going to be joining us in just a minute. But let's show you what the Bulldogs have done this season in the postseason. Let's show you what they've done in the playoffs. Westfield 40, South County 13. And then you look at Westfield over West Potomac. That was 41-7. Of course, this is all in the region. And that thrilling region final, Westfield 58, West Springfield 34. And an absolute, Dave, you said it earlier, this is one of the best games you've ever seen. And I agree with you on that. Westfield 24, Oscar Smith 21. We're going to get to the highlights in just a minute, but Paul Frummelt, walk us through each quarter.
All right, quarter by quarter, you see Westfield gets on the board first with a field goal. They had an opportunity to put 14 points on the board, 2 possessions right in there in the red zone, but only 3 points. In the second quarter, Oscar Smith came back to make the score 7-3 at halftime. In the third quarter, Westfield scores 14. Oscar Smith scores 14 in the fourth, but Westfield gets those last 7 points to win the game 24-21.
You see Oscar Smith with 14 in the fourth quarter, but Glennon on that 63-yard game-winning drive, and no play more important than a little slant pass to David Crutchko to keep that drive alive on fourth down right inside the red zone. And, of course, they score on another pass from Glennon to Randy Johns, I believe. Before the win, it was a 5-yard jump ball pass down the middle. Absolutely wonderful game, guys. There were some leaders in this game. Brian Kennedy I have to say that Brian Kennedy is probably the best football player on that team. Everybody knows Mike Glennon and that he's going to NC State. He's a great player. But Brian Kennedy is the best football player on that team. And Paul, Dave, we all got a chance to see Brian Kennedy in that game. Paul, to you, what was the most impressive as you see his numbers there? Only 5 carries, but he led the rushing stats with 52 yards and a 49-yard touchdown.
Well, the 49-yard touchdown is what was key there. But what Brian was most important, it was on defense. You don't see his defensive stats, but he had an interception, and it always seemed like Brian Kennedy was the one making the tackle. He was all over the field. I told him I thought he was the best athlete on the field that day, and of course he was modest. He said, no, they were much better than me, but he was. I believe he was the best athlete on the field that day.
All right, Stephen Tabbitt had 12 carries for 33 yards with a 2.8 average. And Brandon Farrell, looking at his numbers, Mike Glennon, negative yardage on rushing, but he had a touchdown, so that counts. Let's go into Glennon's numbers, because Dave, Glennon was impressive, especially on the game-winning drive.
Not his best stats of the season, but he definitely came through in the clutch, completed 18 of his 34 passes, did have the 1 pick. It was kind of a toss-up at the end zone, almost like a punt. Did have 1 touchdown pass, ended up being the game winner, and a long pass of 83 yards went to Johnny Pickett, who got tackled right before Glennon snuck in the end zone for his touchdown of the game.
We didn't give you Johnny Pickett stats, but he was also one of the best players on the field. 180 yards on 9 receptions, including that 83-yard bomb that Glennon launched up. We're going to see that in the highlights in just a minute. But when you look at Glennon's completion percentage, it's not his best of the year. He was going up against a fantastic defense, a lot of athletes. This team had athletes that many recruiting experts believe will send 11 players to the Division I level. Their quarterback is 15 years old. He's going to be the 12th because this may be, his name's Philip Sims. You can't forget that name because everybody knows Phil Sims, but he's going to be an NFL player. He's 15 years old, and he's one of the best that I've ever seen. I think he'll be better than Vic. I think he'll be better than Curry. I think he'll be the best player that ever came out of Virginia. Write it down.
Okay, turn into John Marcari over here.
Write it down, take a picture.
I think you saw a different game up in the press box. Us average Joes on the field, we have a different opinion.
All right, Stephen Norris has seen quite a few games in the area in his time. We're going to get his thoughts in just a minute, but we're going to let you folks at home, we'll let you make up your own minds on what this quarterback was able to do as we jump in to the highlights. Remember, the quarterback's name is Philip Sims, but here, that's Mikey Glennon. Everybody knows Mikey, and to his favorite receiver, Paul Johnny Pickett.
Of course, obviously, Glennon, I think, was the better of the two quarterbacks. He had the precision passes you saw right there. And then there's that first field goal to get Westfield on the board.
David Scott, the kicker. Okay, here's the quarterback, Philip Sims. Now this time he gets crushed on the opening possession for Oscar Smith. Great defensive effort by Westfield. At the beginning, you see a little screen pass here out to Tabbitt.
At the closing speed that the linebackers have, it's just amazing. There's such a great defense.
Okay, the underneath stuff. Here's Todd Harrelson. He was doing this all day. This kid finished with a record in receptions with 15. He also had 354 yards. He's going to UNC. 3 touchdowns. Both of those were records. Okay, here's Philip Sims. Watch his poise in the pocket. Remember, he's 15 years old. He rolls out. Okay, he's getting rushed here. I guess not much poise on that one.
Well, he didn't have anywhere to pass to.
Okay, but this time he did. Watch the launch downfield. In stride, never breaks stride. That's a beautiful pass.
Bad call.
Go ahead, Dave.
You probably saw me in the background. He was out of bounds. I was 5 feet away from him.
All right, how about the call on this one? The jump ball to the back of the end zone.
No,
okay on that?
You let your athletes do what your athletes do, and obviously on the jump ball, Westfield was a little bit short.
Speaking of athletes, here's Mike Glennon rolling out and a laser to Ross Lavin. Look at this second hit here. Watch it.
Bam.
Now that's state semifinal hitting right there.
Absolutely. Okay, in the first half, Westfield defensively was okay, but look at Oscar Smith, the jump ball in the end zone, just as good as a punt.
Interception, yep.
That's just as good as a punt. So Glennon's numbers may not have looked fantastic, but they were taking their shots at the right time. The underneath stuff, though, was open all day.
Yeah, you throw a 5-yard pass and your athletes just run around the field, and Westfield didn't really have anything to do with it. Again, there was a great pass right there, perfectly placed, but still I just thought that Sims was just throwing the ball up and letting his amazing athletes do what his amazing athletes are doing. He had the best wide receivers I have seen this season.
Again, 11 players could be going to the Division I level. Stefan, I want to ask you, now seeing the first half highlights, those of you who are just tuning in, Stephen Norris joining us is going to be giving us his knowledge on Woodbridge and Potomac, but Stephan, having covered so many athletes in this area and in the state for so long, you look at those highlights and you see the ability that Oscar Smith had. I mean, Westfield being able to pull that one out of the fire, we'll see in the second half, but just seeing the first half, I mean, you got to admit, that's a pretty tough game for Westfield to come back and win.
Yeah, I'm sad I missed that game. Looks like a great game.
Tell me a little bit, though. I mean, when you see a sophomore quarterback, you've covered a lot of kids over the years. You see a sophomore that age for Oscar Smith being able to launch it. It's obvious that they're going to be a team that's going to be back at the state level.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when you got a sophomore in there, you can obviously grow him. Big key to that is great line play. Looks like they got a lot of athletes on the field. He's putting the ball in the right place, and like you were saying, let your athletes do the work.
They certainly have a lot of athletes. And in the first half, guys, what did you think the story was of the game, if you just broke it down by half, Dave?
The story of the game in the first half was the first 2 drives for Westfield. They started on, I believe, like the 28 and the 32-yard line. Came away with only a field goal, went for it on 4th and goal from, I think, the 4. The run defense for Oscar Smith was unbelievable. Other than the one long touchdown in the second half, Westfield had no run game whatsoever, so they needed to come away with some more points at the beginning of the game.
That's one thing that I noticed going off what Dave said, field position. Oscar Smith's special teams were lacking. Their punter could not get the ball. It was 10 net yards, 15 net yards on every punt, and it seemed like Westfield always had very favorable field position. And again, those first two drives starting almost within the red zone, that really helped out Westfield quite a bit.
Okay, but you said that the punter really couldn't do his thing, but you're Oscar Smith, you got 11 D1 kids, and you have a badass offense. You probably never had to punt, especially down there when in the Beach District in Chesapeake. And you know, Stefan, you've covered sports for so long. It's lopsided districts when you have one team at the top, and you never had to punt all year. They had a kid coming in 15-yard punts.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk a little bit about the experience at this level. I mean, you get to the state level, you have to be well-rounded in all facets of the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's what you see. The teams that can stretch the field and run the ball, the teams that have the balanced offense and the balanced defense, those are teams that win. I've seen so many teams just rely on the run and never really mix in the pass, even if it's just as a decoy. You know, so many teams just stick to that run. But bottom line is you've got to have a kid who can throw the ball and stretch the field to win in high school football.
And throw a soccer player in there. I mean, seriously,
soccer.
it doesn't seem like it's that. We're going to talk about Stonebridge later, but going with Stonebridge, they have, you know, last year the quarterback Terrence Glenn was the punter as well, and he did a much better job than this Oscar Smith kid.
Sometimes you wonder coaches are just trying to protect their kids. You don't want to throw your NFL prospect out there to start punting when maybe you just think, hey, we'll get the ball back and we'll score. And there was a lot of scoring in the second half. Let's jump in to the second half highlights, which started off with a little, look at that draw play right up the middle. Brian Kennedy, here's the 49-yard touchdown.
He almost fell down. They tripped him up a little bit, but he stayed on his feet and was untouched all the way to the
That's
end
what
zone.
BK's been doing all year for Westfield.
It's like he was running the 100 meters there.
that change of pace runner that it does so well. There's BK again. You see how much of a difference he made in that third quarter for Westfield.
All right, Oscar Smith in the red zone. And Kennedy returned this one 73 yards, but they called it back on a hold. And you see Glennon here rolling out of the pocket.
Watch the block. Bam.
Nice.
And watch Pickett wide open downfield. You got to be thinking, if you're Pickett, please don't drop this. Please don't drop this. Please don't drop this. And he gets caught right before the goal line. But they set up for Mikey Glennon, rushed for negative 11 yards on the day. But that one was positive. That one was a touchdown.
Here's the Oscar Smith comeback. 2 quick touchdowns. Obviously, blown coverage there, a little tripping, wide open. Sims hits him perfectly.
All right.
A little extra point here. Getting closer and closer.
So a little bit of a kicking game. I guess they kicked a lot of extra points this year, and there's a little out
game-winning
pass.
touchdown right there. The ensuing kickoff was a fumble that ended the game for Westfield right here.
And it was such a good game. It was so back and forth.
Wow.
It was so exciting. And you know, Westfield was glad they fumbled that kickoff, but it kind of felt a little anticlimactic. You know, Oscar Smith. You know, they have these athletes. They can score an 80-yard touchdown in 2 seconds. This is still a game. There's a minute left, but this is still a game. And then they fumble the kickoff there.
There's a lot of coverage on our website at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. You can read all about the record-setting day and see statistics from that game. And the stat sheet was filled up. I think my pen ran out of ink at some point, tracking all the stats. Speaking of stats, we got some stats. Let's show the folks at home what happened in this barn burner. Okay, first downs, Oscar Smith, Paul, led in that category. And you see in rush yardage, it was all Westfield.
You can see there, obviously, yes, the five extra first downs for Oscar Smith, but Westfield gets 84 yards, which is huge against this Oscar Smith team. 28 rushes for 84 yards. Passing, 270 from Mike Glenn. Hey, that's pretty good. Oh, wait, look at Phil Sims. 480 yards for Phil Sims passing, and that is obviously a record. And then you see total offense, 354 yards for Westfield, 487 for Oscar Smith. And here, look at this, punts. 5 for Westfield, 42 yards average. 5 for Oscar Smith, 20-yard average.
And the glaring stat when we look at what Oscar Smith did in rushing, 21 carries for 7 yards. Now, Oscar Smith set so many passing records in this game, including quarterback completions with 26 for single-game playoff records, 480 yards. The wide receivers, 3 touchdowns were a single-game record for a wide receiver, and catches by a wide receiver, 15. But so when you look at Westfield's defensive effort, you might think, wow, the defense really mailed it in. But look at the rushing yardage, guys. And it's not like they just went to the pass and that was it. There was 21 rush attempts that went for only 7 yards. Several of these were for a loss. A couple of sacks in the game, Paul, and they were stuffing the run pretty well.
The defense did amazing. Looking at the stat line, you see that 480 yards. Yeah, maybe that's not you think, okay, defense probably did mail it in. But no, this defense was incredible. Oscar Smith is that good offensively. And for the defense to hold them to 7 yards on 21 rushes, it's amazing.
What do you got, Dave?
Todd Harrelson is that good offensively. Caught about 350 of those passing yards and all 3 touchdowns. Kid was just a freak athlete, probably the best wide receiver I've seen all year.
He's going to the University of North Carolina, so they get quite the pickup out of this area.
Should
You got to
be going
wonder.
to USC or something. I mean, good
North
Lord.
Carolina's doing a great job of recruiting. They just got
Butch
Marvin
Davis.
Austin last year out of this area. So
Marvin Austin, the big player out of D.C., one of the most highly touted players in the country. And as you said, UNC picked him up, and Todd Harrelson now feeding that pipeline. So UNC doing a good job recruiting this area. Woodbridge has a couple of kids that are looking to get recruited. Let's talk a little bit about Woodbridge. Let's talk about the Vikings as they head into their matchup. Here's where Stephen Norris starts dropping his knowledge. All right, Paul Frummel, take it away.
All right, so we got Westfield versus Woodbridge, obviously, at Scott Stadium, the second game of a doubleheader where D5 goes first. It is this Saturday at 4:30.
Okay, Stephen Norris, let's jump right into this now. I'm going to pick your brain here, okay?
All right.
I know everything about the Westfield Bulldogs, including that their opponent's combined record was 83-73. They forced now write them down, 531 points, and they've only allowed 118. I believe that's at about 8.34 points a clip.
Five shutouts.
There you go, 5 shutouts. Paul Frummel dropping knowledge. So, we know what we're talking about when it comes to Westfield. When it comes to Woodbridge, man, that's your world. They're 9-4. What do people not know about the Vikings?
I think that people don't realize that Woodbridge was a favorite to win the region in the beginning of the season. But they had a barrage of injuries. At one time, they had about 7 starters out. And so because of that, they've been able to work in some depth along with their already good guys. So now they've got young guys that have been worked into the mix, who've had some game experience, they've been battle tested, and they could put them in. And now they've got a much deeper team. Looking at Westfield and Oscar Smith highlights, it reminds me a lot of Osborne and Salem last year, probably the best high school game I've ever seen.
All right, and we have players to watch there. Running back DeAntoine Williams. We'll get to him and talk about him with Stephen in just a minute. Now joining us on the FSN hotline, he's getting used to this, and I think we're putting some mileage on his phone there. We're going to owe him some minutes back. It's Mikey Glennon of the Westfield Bulldogs. Mike, are you with us?
For one last time, here I am.
All right, Mike, quite an impressive game this past weekend. And when you now get a chance to sit back, I don't know if you've got a chance to look at some game tape and see what really happened in that game, because everyone was just amped up afterwards. What are your thoughts now that you've had a chance to take all of that in?
Well, I'd still say that they were a great team, hands down the best team we played all year. So, I mean, you can't take anything away from them, but at the same time, we probably didn't execute as well as planned. And if we just do a few assignments right in the game, we probably have a little bigger lead, but at the same time, I'm sure they're saying the same things about themselves. So, I mean, it definitely was probably, besides Chantilly last year, at least this time we were on the winning side, but those 2 games were probably the best games I've ever been a part of.
Mike, talk me through what was going through your mind right before that final drive. You drove down the Bulldogs for the winning score. What was going in through your head before that drive?
Well, I told the linemen at the start of the second half that they were going to win us the game. So I went up to each lineman we had, and I told them that they were going to win us the game, and really that's what they did. Going into the drive, I knew that we were going to have to execute, but at the same time, I knew we would probably be able to get the ball back if we didn't score that one time, but that was our chance, and we just went down the field, and line did a great job. Receivers made plays, and it was a great way to end the game.
For those of you just tuning in, Mike Glennon of the Westfield Bulldogs joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report, an all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. Glennon led the game-winning drive, a 63-yard drive that ate up 4 minutes and 25 seconds, and with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left, through the game-winning touchdown. Dave Bushenfeld, you were at the game.
It was amazing. Looking ahead to this Saturday's game, though, Mike, I was talking to Coach King over at Woodbridge. He was saying that the key for them will be to get some pressure on you, force you into some bad throws. Do you like knowing that you're the focus of the other team's game plan like that?
It doesn't really bother me. We just have to execute, like I said. I mean, some teams want to come after me. Some teams want to drop back. Whatever they want to do, we just got to do what we're taught and execute our game plan, and whatever happens, let it happen.
Mike, Brian Kennedy, I talked to you after the game, and he had such a great effort. 10 tackles, 2 of them were touchdown-saving tackles. A 49-yard touchdown run to start the second half to put you guys on top, and he also had an interception in the game. And he's a little undersized at 5'8", but he's probably one of the best high school football players in the state. Talk a little bit about what Brian Kennedy means to you guys in the locker room.
He's a tremendous leader, and he's a playmaker. That's probably the best word to describe him. And he just goes out and make plays. And like I told you after the game, that he's the heart and soul of our team. He plays offense, defense, and I mean, whenever you watch Brian play, you know he's giving it everything he's got. He's all heart, and that's really what you need to be successful. And he just is, I mean, like you said, probably one of the best high school players in the state of Virginia.
And Mike, after the West Springfield game, when you guys rushed for over 500 yards, we talked about how balanced the team was, and you're going to give them whatever a defense is going to give us, we're going to take. This game, you guys couldn't run the ball very well, so you took over with the arm. Talk a bit more about the balance that the Bulldogs have.
We know that it's just all game plan. Every week's going to be different, and every player on our team is unselfish. So week in and week out, I mean, it could be different. So it's just been all year long, we've been very unselfish and take whatever the defense gives us. Some games, teams like to drop back and stop the pass. Some teams give up the run. So either way, we're just going to do whatever it takes to win.
That's quite a luxury that you guys have to be able to do that. From watching game film on Woodbridge, what do you think their most underrated part is, or what's the most underrated thing about that team?
Well, I think the most hyped up part is obviously their running back, and he seems like an excellent player. I haven't seen him too much because I watch the defense, but they actually have, on defense, they're better than I expected. They got good athletes on the outside, and then they usually run 3 down linemen that they can get pressure. And I was told by one of the coaches that in the past 3 games, they've had 11 turnovers. So obviously they're capitalizing on their turnovers, and they didn't have as great of a regular season, but if they're in the state championship, they've obviously been playing some good football as of lately.
How comforting is it for you guys, Mike, knowing that I believe Coach Verbenek said only one of his staff wasn't with him in 2003, that the whole coaching staff has been there before and knows what it takes to win a state championship?
Well, I've said it from day one that we have the best coaches around. We have a lot of former head coaches, and the one coach that wasn't with them was a coach at Fairfax, a head coach. So we have experience all the way around, and all of them know what it takes to win a state championship, and I'm sure they would like to get another ring on their fingers. So they've been preparing us all year long, and I expect to have a great game plan going into this week.
All right, Mikey, and maybe you can get another ring for you and the Glennon family. You and Sean can battle as to whose ring looks nicer. Yours, if you do claim one, will have one more win attached to it, so you can always hold that over his head. Mike, thanks for joining us every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report. We'll be seeing you down in Charlottesville.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Thanks to Mike Glennon and the Westfield Bulldogs for joining us each week on the Fairfax Sports Report. We're going to go to a quick segue where you'll get some action, some mixed martial arts action, guys. Yeah, we're mixing it up a little bit here on the Fairfax Sports Report, but when we come back from that, it's all about D5. Mickey Thompson going to be joining us from the Stonebridge Bulldogs, and Joe Conroy of the Potomac News will be getting to him when we come back.
37 years old, at this age making your debut. Yeah. Why do this now?
Well, there's a fine line between a brave man and a fool, and I think I'm maybe somewhere on the middle of the fence somewhere. But I had an extensive wrestling background up through 2000. I was on the national team for 4 years, tried to make the Olympic team, which I didn't. Then I jumped into my business, Freedom Tree Service, full blast since then. So the business has kind of grown to a point where it's freed up a little bit of time. I can train a bit. And I told my wife it's my early midlife crisis, This, at this point, it's a glorified hobby, I suppose. I told my friend Dave Anderson, who owns One Spirit Martial Arts, where I train, that he approached me this summer about getting on this fighting team he was putting together. And so in August, I said, okay, I'll go for it. So I had my first fight September 1st, and then I've had 2 since then, so a total of 3 fights. And so at this point, we said after first of the year, we kind of reevaluate. just see how things are going with the family. You have a wife, 4 kids, and so it's making sure the training time, everything is good there, and then business time still that everything's okay. So as long as the priorities are getting taken care of. So at this point, it's glorified hobby. We'll see after this, how we go from there.
You're kind of the guy that most people came here to see. Do you feel a little pressure from that?
Yeah, certainly there's pressure there. But, the nice thing, win or lose, I'm going home tomorrow morning. I'll probably be changing a dirty diaper. Got kids crawling all over me. My wife that loves me, love her, the kids, and then the business. So not a whole lot of things change. You know what I mean? I'm going to go out there and let it fly. I've been with my wrestling background, I've been in a lot of pressured situations before. So that's a big part of the battle, is just what you do with the nerves.
And you're here at George Mason. Is it a little nostalgic being back on campus?
Yeah, but it's funny. The only times I really came in the Patriot Center was usually to be running the bleachers, or, the stairs. So it was kind of bad flashbacks at first, looking at all the stairs. Yeah, did many trips up and down those. So yeah, it's nice to be back at George Mason.
Fairfax High School Hall of Famer.
All right, and for those of you tuning in now wondering what that was here on the Fairfax Sports Report, that was former Fairfax High School wrestler. That's right, Paul's from Fairfax. That's right. Former Fairfax High School wrestler Johnny Curtis made his mixed martial arts professional debut at the Patriot Center last week. He had 3 amateur fights in which he submitted everyone in the first round, and, well, it wasn't different in his pro debut as he used an arm triangle to choke out the guy that he fought. The original guy he was supposed to fight actually backed out of the fight. He was scared of this guy, and it looked like the guy he fought was also scared as well. But, you heard Curtis talking there. He could make this, maybe more than a glorified hobby, and I have a feeling that if the Patriot Center and the staff of promoters continues to promote this sort of thing, maybe he'll be the featured guy, a la Jimmy Lang, who will be fighting at the Patriot Center on March 29th. Speaking of fights, Stonebridge is in for a fight as they head into the state championship. Well, let's check out what the Bulldogs did this past weekend against Phoebus, one of the more storied programs in the state, Paul Frummel.
Taking a look at the box score, you see Phoebus gets on the board first, the defending champs, 7-0 in the first quarter, and then 14 points apiece in the second quarter going into halftime. Stonebridge still trailing going into the locker room. 7-3 in the third quarter, Stonebridge gaining a little steam, and then look at that fourth quarter. Stonebridge knowing, hey, we want to go to this championship. We want to get there. 17 points to win convincingly, 38-24.
In just a minute, Joe Conroy of the Potomac News is going to be joining us by phone to talk a little bit about what Stonebridge has to do in their upcoming meeting with Potomac. Joe has the luxury of having seen Stonebridge when he worked in the Loudoun area, and now he's also seen Potomac working in the Woodbridge area. But that's your world too, Stephen Norris, so you're going to be giving us the inside take on Potomac. Before we get to that, though, let's jump right into what Gavea and the Bulldogs did over the past weekend.
No surprise here, Patrick Thompson, Coach Thompson's son, threw 9 for 18, 131 yards, had a touchdown and interception, and Gavea was the star of the day. 18 rushes, 103 yards, 3 touchdowns, all of which came in the second half when the game was on the line.
All right, for those of you new to this show, that's Jaron Gavea. We've talked about him all season long. 103 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had an early fumble that he made up for in a major way with 3 touchdowns. And you see Gavea, a major reason there, pictured on your screen, a major reason there as to why Stonebridge is going to be heading into their second state final, the first time against Hampton, one of the best programs in the history of the state with more than a dozen state trophies. We'll see if Stonebridge can get one, as it's an all-Northern Virginia state championship with Division 6 and Division 5, all the teams heading down to Charlottesville. Let's jump in, though, to what Potomac and Stonebridge. Let's jump into the matchup. Where will the Panthers be taking on the Bulldogs? And, well, it's going to be at noon. It's going to be right before the Division 6 game at noon. That's going to be at Scott Stadium in Charlottesville. Stephen Norris, let's jump right into this. You are the expert, as we say, about the Potomac Panthers. All right, they're 13-0.
Is that what they call me?
That's right, man. You're an expert, man. Come on, drop some knowledge, baby. Opponents' combined records for the Potomac Panthers, 76-66, and they've scored over 400 points. You see to Stonebridge's 565. When you look at their record, Stonebridge one big loss this year. They got hammered by Robinson in the early goings. But it was Potomac, 13-0. Have they seen the same type of competition that Stonebridge has seen?
That's tough to say because I don't get to the Northern region a lot. I know that the Cardinal District is traditionally very strong. It's very smash mouth. This year there wasn't a lot of passing, but Potomac can guard the pass. The thing that strikes me about Potomac is their ability to make plays, and Muku Koloko is a great example of that. You see here 184 carries for 966 yards, 10 TDs, 4 receptions. But the guy gets it done on defense as well. He made first team All-District on special teams, defense, and offense.
Wow. So that's a pretty complete player.
He's a flat-out athlete, and he's flown under the radar because he didn't go to any camps last year.
Right.
He wasn't a star player last year. He was a good player for them, but he wasn't a star. This year, before the season, he put on about 10 or 20 pounds of muscle, and so he's having the year that he's having, and he's really flown under the radar. Whoever picks this kid up is going to have a steal. But Potomac flat out has some athletes.
It seems like Koloko is potentially what Jaron Gavea is to Stonebridge.
That
Koloko
big play
is
guy.
that. Right. I mean, he made first team on all 3 levels of the game. Looking deeper than Koloko, who are some guys that he flew under the radar a little bit, but some other guys that have flown under the radar as well for Potomac?
Yeah, Koloko at running back splits time with a kid named Darius Brent. They both play linebacker as well. Brent's a great linebacker, and he's also a good running back. He's a guy who's going to pick up those 4th and 1 yards, run between the tackles. You know, he's just a small guy, but he could take a lot of hits. Another kid to look out for is George Bansa, first team All-State on offensive line. I think he was second team last year on defensive line. He could be first team All-State both ways this year. Just a real heady player. Some other guys, Abdul Kane, defensive player of the year in the region. Coaches tell me they just flat out don't even throw to his side. Free safety, and this guy can hit. He's also probably, he is their top receiver.
All right, so Mickey Thompson on the FSN hotline right now. He's writing all this down, getting the scouting report. Now, I think he's been watching this for the last couple of weeks on film, if I know Mickey Thompson. Mickey, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Coach, thanks for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. You're a regular now here on these episodes. We're going to have to get you in studio pretty soon. Just give you your own show, man.
That'd be all right.
All right, Coach Thompson, thanks for joining us. Now let's get down to business. Talk a little bit about the win this weekend. You guys came from behind against a tough Phoebus team. What was the story of that game?
Well, I think early on, we were talking as coaches, and I told them that we were dominating the front, but we weren't able to take advantage of it early and made some mistakes, and really I thought kept them in the game. And at halftime, I felt like that we were a much better team, and we were just giving them the ball game at that point. And if we could just minimize our mistakes, we could come out, and if you're controlling the line of scrimmage, eventually you're going to get control of the game. And then we come out and throw a pick the first series.
So I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but really we played well up front the entire game.
Looking at in the fourth quarter, outscoring them 17-0. Was that just mistake-free football that allowed you guys to score those 17 points?
Just one of those things where you finally latch on to something. The plays that we were running in the fourth quarter are plays that, I think we self-scout every now and then, and the plays that we were running were netting about 2 yards a carry for the season. And so we hadn't even gone to those, more of a straight-ahead power kind of game. So once we started hitting some of those, we just stayed with it. It's one of those things where really we hadn't been very good at that all year, and we were just, the matchup was there for this game.
Coach, everybody always talks about Jaron Gavea with good reason because he's a phenomenal athlete. Talk a little bit about Ryan Moody. Had another big touchdown catch for you on Saturday. He's kind of been your unsung hero out there this year.
Yeah, he's really grown up. I mean, he's taken on a lot more leadership role with the team. There's just a whole different attitude with him, and I think he's become a big-time football player and should and hopefully get a chance to play some major college football. It's just, unfortunately, all this started pretty late for him, and we're hoping he can land someplace.
Mickey, looking at Potomac, where do you think a potential weakness of theirs might be?
I don't think they have many weaknesses. It's hard to tell what offense we'll be running against them, what can be effective, can we move the ball against them. I think they're a big play offensive team, and we just got to make sure that we make them earn every yard and don't give up the big play. They remind me a lot of Edison, and the fact that we were really conscious of not giving up the big play because we thought that would be a killer. And I think they're always looking for the big play. They're always trying to get, and I don't know names, they're always trying to get number 4 loose. Because if he gets a seam, he's gone. They do a great job throwing the ball when they have to. Their offensive line, you don't look up there and see any kids that you say, well, okay, this kid can't play. They can all play. On defense, they run to the ball. They got good team speed. Secondary is really good, breaks on the ball real well. It's hard to find. I have no idea what we'll run until we get in the game, and we'll just try some of our different schemes and see if we start to hit on something, and we'll stay with it.
Mickey, going into this state final, I know that you guys, obviously, you've been there before. Some of these kids, are they going to be tight going into this game, knowing that, all right, man, we've been here before, we faced a tough team in the state final, didn't go our way. How do you loosen them up, knowing that they're playing for a trophy and playing for more than just themselves? Talk a little bit about that. How do you settle the team down?
Well, I think 2 years ago when we went, they were just glad to be there, and I think we were definitely the underdog, and we knew that Hampton would have to play poorly in order for us to win. And in this case, I think they go in this game realizing that, hey, if we play well, we're going to win this football game, and that's their feeling. And it's a quiet confidence. They don't go around talking about it, but I think they feel pretty confident it's in our hands, and it's within the team. So. I don't think you'll see them be very tight. They haven't been tight all year. They weren't tight against Phoebus, and I think they'll be ready to go.
Coach, last week you used Terrence Glenn come back from Rhode Island to help you out in practice. Any interesting or creative practices you're having this week?
Well, I just like to practice. I mean, we got an hour today is all we got inside. Yesterday was pretty rough. It was pretty cold. So trying to get anything done. We didn't practice Monday. We just watched film. So. Man, I'm hoping we can get outside and get a decent practice because, they run a lot of the same kind of schemes as we run. They're unbalanced. It's not a big deal, but you got to take a little time to be able to line up in the right place and all that. So I'm just hoping we can get a full 2-hour practice in.
Talking to a couple coaches in the area that have seen Phoebus, they say that they have just one of the stingiest defenses that they've ever seen. What was the key and how did you guys put up so many points, 38 points on such a tough defense like that?
Well, I mean, like I said, I didn't expect to be able to match up with them very well up front, and I thought that would be a problem. So we went in the game thinking we were going to have to throw the ball to win the game, and we got in the game. We tried to throw the ball, and we had some success, but it was moderate success. And we didn't even start out trying to go at them because we just thought that was not the matchup that we wanted. And as the game went on, we finally gravitated towards that, and we actually took advantage of that matchup that I didn't think was going to be there. So that's what I learned from that game is, going into Potomac, there's some things I think we can do, but is that real or not, and will that materialize, and will we have to go to some other things and look at some other things we didn't think we're going to be able to take advantage of? So, and that's high school football. You really can't tell because the film you get isn't the greatest quality most of the time, and you're trying to figure out who's playing against who and whether that kid that they're playing against is very good and all those factors. So we're going in with an open mind, ready to. We feel like we got 3 or 4 different offensive schemes, and we're going to go into it, hopefully taking advantage of something in each one of them.
Now, Coach, one question I've always wanted to ask you. Talk about your philosophy for going for it on 4th down. You guys don't punt a whole lot. You go for it a lot on 4th down. Why is that, and will you still go for it in such a big game on Saturday?
Well, last time in 2005 against Hampton, we went 7 times on 4th down.
Wow.
So, I'm not going to change that. It all comes down to, if you have a good play, if you feel good about a play and you think you can get it and you have the confidence to get it, I think it's foolish not to go because, then you're going to turn around and try to punt a ball. And most high school punts average about 24 yards net. And, if we had a kicker that could kick the ball 50 yards, 60 yards, that'd be a different story. But, we're not going to get, I'll take my shot against a 25-yarder if I got a good play. Now, if we go into it and I don't care if it's 4th and 1 and we don't feel like we have a good play, then we're going to punt.
So, earlier in the season, before the season next started, actually, you were quoted as saying that you thought that this Stonebridge team was the best team that you've ever coached. Why? What did you see at the beginning of the season that would make you say that? And I guess we're seeing that now.
Well, just top to bottom, the quality of players. Sometimes you have some top-heavy teams. They got some great players, but as you get down to your last starters or some of the key role players, they're just not very good football players. And this was a case where I really feel strongly that we can go all the way down to the bottom of the last starter that we have or some of our role players, and they would be starting on an awful lot of football teams and being one of the top starters. We just have a lot of guys that can play football and a lot of guys who can play and a lot of guys who compete every day for those jobs. That's why you see so many guys rotating in. We feel like we got 16 starters on offense and 14 or 15 starters on defense. So there are a lot of guys playing a lot of roles. And, if you got that many guys that can play, we've had injuries all year long, and guys have been able to step up and fill those voids, and people don't even know that some of our players are hurt. We've got players hurt now, and we'll have people step up and fill in for them.
Mickey, before we let you go, I got to ask you, you're the coach of the Stonebridge Bulldogs, and you got 2 sons on the team. One of them, your son, is the high-profile quarterback of the team. What's it like in your house right now?
Oh, it's awesome. You always, if you really think about it, what would be a cool life experience, this would be it, and having them here and doing all this, it'd be awesome. We could top it off with a win, but it's been a great ride. Just seeing them, and they played well all year, and them being part of this thing and part of the team, I can't describe it. It's a great feeling, and it's a great thing to go through.
Well, maybe a matching set of rings for the Thompson household. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Mickey, we will see you in Charlottesville. Thanks so much for the time, and good luck.
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you talk to Mickey Thompson is he said, I don't even know, this is what stuck out to me at least, knowing him, having covered him for a couple of years. I don't know what we're going to run until we get out there and we try a couple of things. It's just not true. Okay? He's got about 50 plays designed already going into that game, guaranteed. He's seen more than just one.
Which one he's going to run.
You know what? I guarantee you, Stefan, he's even put it into PlayStation and Madden, and he's tried it. He's probably played the whole game and won in 7 different formats. That's the thing about him. He's so well prepared. He's one of the more underrated coaches in this area, and he's good at making the kids buy and shoot. I'm ready to throw on the pads and get out there and start laying out some hits after listening to him on the phone.
One thing you notice about going for it on 4th down, you think, okay, maybe he's a little risky and all that. What that tells me is he trusts his players. Mm-hmm. He trusts his players to make plays and get 2 crucial yards. And to me, if I have a coach that trusts me and trusts my ability, that's a coach I want to play for. And that's what he's getting from his kids.
That's exactly what I was thinking when he said that.
Mm-hmm.
Building confidence in your kids, showing them that you believe in them. When you go for that 4th and 1 or that 4th and 2, whatever it is, you can get the play done, Mm-hmm. Even if they don't make it and you still go for it again, it still shows that you believe in your kids, mm-hmm. and they're going to rally around that.
7 times on 4th down against Hampton a couple of years ago. And a guy a couple of years ago that used to cover the Stonebridge Bulldogs and now works at the Potomac News and covers Potomac and Woodbridge some teams that are in the state final this week. Is Joe Conroy joining us on the FSN hotline? Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing?
Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us, man. We got your beautiful mug on
yeah,
screen
that's so
now
cute,
for
Joe.
all of Fairfax County to see. Look at that young, strapping lad who covers sports in this area for so long. And Joe, you are one of the few guys that is lucky enough to have covered both of these teams when you're talking about Division 5. You covered Stonebridge a couple of years ago, and we just had Mickey Thompson on the FSN hotline, and he talked about how 2 years ago against Hampton, they went for it 7 times on 4th down. Are they going to be able to get away with that against a team like Potomac?
I don't think so. Potomac's so athletic on both sides of the ball. They've got some great athletes. Most of them play 2 ways. You've got Moku Koloko and Darius Brent. Those are the 2 running backs. They both play linebacker, and they're both heavy hitters on defense. And then there's Abdul Kane, who he plays wide receiver, and he gets most of his attention that way, catching touchdown passes. But he's a big hitter. He put a big lick on a kid last week against Hanover on a kickoff, and pretty much lit the kid up and got the crowd into it. So they're a hard hitting team. George Bansa is a big player on the defensive line. He plays end, he plays tackle. He's all over the place, and he's one of the biggest guys. And I think what'll happen if they want to do that, that can get them into trouble. Because Potomac will get the ball and then they'll go down and score themselves. So they've got a lot of firepower in that offense. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball, they can run misdirection on you. They can do a lot of things.
Joe, you're familiar with Stonebridge, obviously, and their single wing offense. Do you think that offense will give trouble to Potomac?
Well, I know Coach Lilly, Tony Lilly at Potomac, is concerned with that. I talked to him yesterday, and he said that's his main concern, is making sure his kids are focused. He knows that's a tricky offense to watch. There's a lot of spinning in the backfield, a lot of misdirection themselves. They direct snap the ball sometimes to a running back, and not always to the same guy. And even when they do that, sometimes they hand it off again. So there's a lot to watch in the backfield. And if you're not completely focused, you can lose the guy. And by the time you find him, he's 20, 30 yards down the field.
Joe, having covered both teams quite a bit, advantages, disadvantages for both teams?
Well, I think the advantages actually is probably the same for both teams. Is they're both very multiple in their offense. They both can do a lot of different things, and that will help them, offensively, obviously. But it also, I think, help them defensively because they're used to seeing that in practice. Coach Lilly was saying his scout team ran Stonebridge's offense very well the last couple days here in practice. So he's been happy with that. I think, there's not a lot of disadvantages. They both have great speed. I haven't seen Stonebridge this year, so I don't know what they have. But obviously Mickey Thompson's a great coach, and obviously they're in the state final, so they must be pretty good. But I think it'll come down to probably turnovers. You always point to that, but Potomac's been very lucky in the last few games. They have not turned the ball over much. They've thrown a couple interceptions in the playoffs, but really they've held on to the ball and really forced other teams to make their mistakes. And when they've done that, they've turned them into points. There haven't been too many turnovers that they've forced or received that haven't turned into touchdowns or at least field goals for them this year.
Didn't Muku pick off an option pitch last week?
Yeah, he did. In fact, most of us weren't even sure what happened. It happened so fast. He split into the backfield and kind of locked onto the quarterback and realized this is going to be an option. And the quarterback stopped for whatever reason and pitched it. And Moku put his hand up, popped it up in the air, grabbed it, and took off. And I think it was about 50-some yards for a touchdown. In fact, he actually started to lose the ball. He was all by himself. At about the 25, he started to lose the ball, juggled it to himself, and had the crowd in gasps, worrying they were going to turn the ball back over. He corralled it, of course, and ended up scoring. So he's quite an athlete.
You had to pick one guy in Potomac who's going to give Stonebridge the most trouble on Saturday. Who would it be?
If I had to pick one guy, I would say Darius Brent. He's kind of been a surprise not really a surprise. Most people know who he is, but he kind of pounds you away. he'll get 2 or 3 yards here and there, and then all of a sudden, boom, he'll hit you for like a 50-yard run. He's the other half of that running back combo with Coloco in the backfield, and like I said, he's a big hitter, and he's big time on offense and defense. So I think he'll be one of the players to watch for them.
Joe, one thing that I was talking about with these guys before you got on the phone was just how underrated Muku is, not being a big-time star player last year, not having gone to any camps over the summer. In your opinion, from what you've seen, just talent-wise, how does he stack up to some other kids that are major D1 caliber players? Do you think he's that level?
I think he could be. I don't know if he has the size necessarily for those programs to probably look at him, and he hasn't really made a lot of noise. Part of the problem, and it's a nice problem for Potomac to have, is that he shares the carries with Darius. It's great that they can have 2 backs, but really, if you take either one of those guys to another program, they could probably each be a feature back. And I think heading into last week's game, they were both around 900 or 800 yards each, despite not having a full year set of carries. So they're both very good. But like I said, Moku, he's probably a little underrated just because he's not the only guy back there, so he loses some of those carries. But he scores. I think he's up to probably close to 20 touchdowns this year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he scores receiving. He scores on kickoffs. He scores on punts. He scores on running. He came up with several point after blocks this year and field goal blocks. He came up with a key block with 2 seconds remaining against Hilton that would have given Hilton the win. So he seems to be a very clutch player, and I think he'd be a steal for any program that gets him at the college level.
All right, Joe Conroy was clutch for us here tonight on the Fairfax Sports Reports FSN Hotline. Joe, we're running out of time, so we're going to save the Division 6 talk for maybe another time. Maybe we'll get you in studio or on the phone maybe next week after we're all said and done here with our state finals.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks, guys.
Joe, thanks for the time.
Hey, Joe, thanks.
So, Stefan, you've had an opportunity to see both of these teams. As we mentioned, Stefan did some great work in the area covering Prince William teams. If you have to make your pick, I'm putting you on the spot first, man.
Oh, that's tough.
I'm putting you on the spot, man. You got to make your pick. Let's go Division 6 first. Tell me maybe both sides of the coin. We'll give you the easy out. Why does Woodbridge win, or why does Woodbridge lose?
Woodbridge wins because they can play ball control offense. If they can control the game, if they can control the clock, they might have a chance to control the game. A lot of people underestimate DeAntoine Williams. I know that sounds crazy because he's all over the papers. He's, everybody is talking about this kid, but nobody's been able to stop him. The only team that I think stopped him from actually scoring a touchdown was Potomac, but he still racked up probably 140, 150 yards on them. You put 8 kids in the box, whatever you got to do, he just drags them into the end zone.
All right, why does Woodbridge lose?
Woodbridge loses probably because I just don't know that they have the ability to stretch the field like Westfield does. If they get behind, that's going to be trouble. They have put up a lot of points in the last few games. That's some great play calling, some mixing in things. Their quarterback is a great baseball player, and he's been very serviceable for them. And they've got some other guys. Kevin Tyra is a good fullback to mix it in. But if they get behind, that could be trouble just because of Westfield's ability to stretch the field and get it to so many different athletes.
All right, Dave, you've seen Westfield stretch the field all year long here on the Fairfax Sports Network, a couple of games. You can check those out on demand. Also, go online, look for air dates and times. I'm your host, BJ Kubarulis, alongside of Paul Frummelt and Dave Buchenfeld, and joining us from Prince William, the county with the most. I don't know, I tried to say something funny. It just didn't work. Stephen Norris. Tell me a little bit, Dave, about the Westfield. Are they going to be too much for Woodbridge?
I've never seen Woodbridge, but I think so. I mean, I picked Westfield to win the state title at the beginning of the year, and as we all know, I won the pick'ems because I'm a genius. So I think that means Westfield is going to win. We were saying it, a lot of the reporters on the sideline on Saturday, that the semifinal game against Oscar Smith was the state final. Those were the 2 best teams. You could see it on the field. Unbelievable game. Westfield escaped with the win, and I think that they will win on Saturday.
Don't underestimate Woodbridge, though. I'm telling you guys, I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm just saying don't underestimate them. Underdogs against Battlefield, not underdogs against Garfield so much, but they did lose to them the last 2 times they played them. Big-time underdogs to Hermitage. This team believes in themselves, and they're rolling right now. And like Mike Lennon said, the turnovers. That's what when they actually got behind in that Battlefield game in turnovers because of their defense, got them in good field position for their offense to make plays. So their secondary is very underrated.
You know who else is underrated?
Me.
Paul Frummel. Paul Frummel, tell me the same question. Why does Westfield win, but why does Westfield lose?
Westfield wins if they play like they played against Oscar Smith. If they play like they've played all year long, I think Westfield is the better team. But again, they lose if the turnovers. They lose if they can't get things going. They lose if they can't stop the run. Something that they have been able to do all year is stop the run. If they can't stop the run, obviously they lose.
I think Westfield won the state title last Saturday when they beat Oscar Smith, and I think it's going to be hard going for anyone to touch Mike Glennon and the boys over at Westfield, and that's because, hey, he's one of our athletes of the week. Mike Glennon, he's a senior quarterback, and he completed 18 of 34 passes for 270 yards and a touchdown against Oscar Smith in the Division VI AAA state semifinals. That pushes Westfield into its second state final.
And you got Jaron Gaveo over here, one of my favorites from Stonebridge. Obviously, he's the running back, but he does so much more for Stonebridge. He rushed 18 times for 103 yards against Phoebus. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but it is against Phoebus in Division V playoff games. So,
all right, guys, going away with it now. Will Stonebridge run away with it? Will Westfield run away with it? They're supposed to be blowouts. They're supposed to be games that are way in favor of the Northern region, but I think as sports writers, I think we've all heard that before. Tune in next week on an all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report when we'll wrap up the entire football season. Go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com and check out coverage of all your favorite local teams. Send us your comments and feedback. I want to thank JKH for his comment this week about keeping Stonebridge in the Northern region. I think we can all agree on that. Special thanks to our teammate CCI Screen Printing at 703-978-0257. All right, guys, heading out on this one of the final episodes of the Fairfax Sports Report of this year. That's right. We got one more left. We'll be wrapping up the state tournament, wrapping up what could be Northern Region, an all-Northern Region championship squad when you look at 2 teams from this region in the state finals. I want to thank Paul Frummel and Dave Bushenfeld, our regulars, and thank you for making this set look much more beautiful than it has in the past. That's right, Stephen Norris from Prince William County, County of Kings, not Princes. That's